Hey, this is Chris Impellitteri from the metal band Impellitteri, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all-ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Unteed, and with me in Dogbowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at NoShockPod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Chris Impellitteri, another guitar shredder.
Yeah, guitar shredder, absolutely. Promoting Impellitteri, Wake the Beast. It's a 3-disc compilation from the Impellitteri catalog from 1987 through 2010. Yeah. A lot of material there.
Oh, I know. I'm excited.
Yeah. Hey, let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Chris, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Unteed.
Chris, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Well, we're so excited to have you tonight. Your PR guy is just absolutely fantastic.
Well, hopefully I don't ruin it for you then.
Well, the good news is September 30th, Impellitteri is releasing Wake the Beast, a 3-disc compilation. Can you talk a little bit more about this opportunity and how did it all come about for you and the rest of the band, I guess?
Yeah, we've been a global band for many years, but unfortunately in the U.S. we really haven't been embraced by the media or, I would say, in pop culture. For some odd reason in Europe, at least in certain places in Europe, like continental Europe and Japan, we ended up selling millions of records, and we do really well in those markets. And over the years, we seem to have captured a lot of new fans, right? New family and friends, as I like to say, around the world. And it's been challenging for them to get our music because, for the most part, we were releasing only in specific countries. And unfortunately, some of that was due to legalities, right, where record companies own the rights, where we couldn't do anything outside of their territories because they paid for it, right, the recording funds and all of that. But over the years, I get so many people that contact us saying, man, we love your music, but it's so expensive. They buy these really expensive, imports or exports, whatever, right? And so when we finally got to the point where we got our masters back, where we own them, we finally, literally one of the first things out of our mouth was, let's do some sort of anthology and release this music so everybody globally can have access to this now. That's what this is about.
Oh, so cool. Well, with Global Rock label releasing Wake the Beast, will you plan on releasing any new Impellitteri music on this label to go along with the compilation?
New music? No. So Impellitteri, we're signed to JVC Victor for, I believe it's like Japan and all of Asia, and then Frontiers We're signed with them for Europe and America. And, you guys may know Frontiers. They've got bands like Journey and Whitesnake and all of that. So we can only do new music with them, right?
Sure.
So Global is, they're basically doing all of the Impellitteri back catalog, right? Which is awesome for me because a lot of people, to be honest, it's brand new to them. There are many people, especially in the United States, don't have a clue of who we are. Some days even I don't know who we are. People, when we say the name Impellitteri, the first thing they think is, "Oh, I'm so sorry. What are you taking for a prescription?"
Very good. Jeff, you got the next question?
Well, talk a little bit about, selecting the tracks for your anthology. I think it has like 3 CDs and like 39 tracks, I think. Can you talk a little bit about the selection process?
Yeah, I can tell you it's really hard selecting songs because as an artist, the music ends up, they become like your children. Yeah. So it's really hard to pick a favorite child, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was challenging, but, over the years, especially when we tour in Europe and Japan and places like that, the people that come to see us, they kind of expect us to play certain songs. And over the years, it's kind of like we get the hint, right? They almost demand it, specific songs. And so that, over the years, kind of gives us a perspective of what they seem to like or what they don't like, right? And so that was kind of like the foundation for how we chose songs, right? Just of what the fan favorites were. And then, then we'd go onto the sites where some person might illegally rip a song or put something up on YouTube, one of our songs, and we'd read the comments, and if people were like, "Oh man, this is great. We love this, blah, blah, blah," we kind of know, okay, they must like that, versus if they say, "Oh, this sucks. Why do people like this band?"
Yeah.
Then we know, maybe probably shouldn't put that song on there,
Well, Wake the Beast compilation draws from the band's material from 1987 through 2010. It did not include material from 2015's Venom release, nor 2018's Nature of the Beast. Can you talk a little bit more about leaving the last 2 albums off the compilation?
Well, yeah, because it's legal issues.
Oh.
So JVC Victor and Global, I'm so sorry, Global Rock. Let me try that again. JVC Victor and Frontiers own the rights to those masters for 7 years.
Gotcha.
So those are still somewhat brand new records, right?
Yeah.
Especially in Impellitteri world where we release records 4 or 5 years apart, So in theory, those are the new records. They still promote them. They still sell them, so we legally couldn't touch those. And to be honest, why would we? I mean, they're really already globally available to everybody.
Sure. Oh, very good.
You've had a couple different singers. Talk a little bit about working with Rob Rock.
Well, Rob he's always kind of been the voice of Impellitteri. Yeah. He did the first Impellitteri Black EP, which really put us on the map, at least in the metal community and around the world, right? Gave us that exposure. It was Graham where things got a little crazy. They kind of, in our little world, they exploded. I like to say our 15 minutes of fame, right? But, Rob has really always been the main guy. I mean, he started the band with me. He's been my writing partner for, 20 plus years. And to be honest, when people ask me, they go, "Well, why Graham and why Rob?" When we first did the first Impellitteri Black EP, Rob and I, there's just something about it. We had been in club bands together. We kind of learned how to write music together. We learned from the same kind of artists. So naturally, when we write, we have a pretty good chemistry, right?
Yeah.
And so when we did the Black EP with Rob, it really started to blow up. I mean, I remember, I think it was Kerrang! Magazine, and at the time, they were the biggest heavy metal magazine in the world. They gave us like a 5 out of 5 star review, meaning, as good as it gets. Called me a guitar hero, love Rob, screaming all the craziness. Yeah. And we got signed by Sony and Relativity Entertainment, which means we finally got a major record deal. And Rob then quits. And he literally, he decides that there's a well-known producer named Dieter Dirks in Germany who was producing a band called the Scorpions. Mm. And they offered Rob this big deal. And so Rob left, and I was kind of like, oh my God, what am I going to do? We have all this buzz. Everybody's talking about the band, especially in LA at the time. And so Graham Bonnet had finished this band Alcatraz, which had some pretty good success initially. Mm-hmm. And Graham and I were really good friends. And, you know, it was one of those things of, hey, what are you doing? I don't know. What are you doing? And so I remember said, all right, well, let's see what we can do with you. Except with Graham, I had to write completely different than the way I kind of wrote with Rob. You know, for Stand in Line, it was much more, let's go in a direction of Rainbow, which I was a little uncomfortable with because I'm much more of a metal kid at heart, you know. But anyway, so we do Stand in Line. It's not one of my favorite records. I do love the song Stand in Line. I love playing it live. It's fun. But it you know, for me, it wasn't really a true Impellitteri record, which is kind of crazy for people to hear, you know. But anyways, that's kind of how Graham came into it, and that record blew up. We were all over MTV. We were playing massive shows, especially in Japan, playing massive arenas and stadiums. It was pretty surreal, to be honest. So, you know, we did that for a while, and then I'm not sure if I'm even answering your question at this point. I hope I am.
You're doing great.
You know, so anyways, so, you know, we do Stand in Line. We played, I think our first show in Japan, we played 65,000-seat Tokyo Dome. Sold out, but it was, of course, with other artists, too. I think Billy Joel's on the bill with us. And it was wild, you know, it was crazy. And then we came back to the States. I think the last live show we did with Graham, we played the San Jose Civic Auditorium, which is up near San Francisco, totally sold out. It was Impellitteri and an artist named Pat Travers Band.
Yes.
Who at the time, they were pretty popular. And I remember coming back, and the show was killer. It was just a great show. And coming back, and Graham had to go back to Australia because his wife was back there, and they were having some marital issues. And I'll never forget, our manager called us and said, we got really good news. And I was like, what? And they were like, well, you got the end of the Iron Maiden tour in the U.S. We're like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So, you know, tour buses, everything are getting arranged. You know, we're getting ready to do the tour, and Graham calls us from Australia telling us he's not coming back because he's trying to save his marriage.
Yeah. So,
so there goes the difference between why we ended up with Rob and Graham. And so then Graham goes out, and Rob comes back into the fold for another, you know, 7 or 8 records, and which equated to about 15 years, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the how these guys ended up in the band, and, you know, and so on.
Oh, very good. Well, you know, so long as we're on, you know, the subject of these two singers, you know, can you kind of compare and contrast the two, you know, as far as in the studio, working with these two guys in the studio? How did it work with Graham opposed to working with Rob opposed to working with Graham? How did it work for you as far as getting those guys in the studio and recording new material?
Okay, so a great example of showing what they bring to the table. Like I said, I was never thrilled with Stand in Line, but there's a but. So years later, Rob would go off to do some solo stuff, and so we brought Graham back in. But this time I said, I'm not going to do another watered-down version of Rainbow. I'm going to do an Impellitteri heavy metal record. But Graham, you're going to bring whatever contribution you bring to the table. You're going to do it, but with our heavy direction versus us trying to rewrite, you know, our style of music. And so if you listen to the record System X, and as a matter of fact, I think the second song on the anthology is a song from System X called Perfect Crime. If you listen to Graham sing that, and then listen to a Rob Rock album, you really hear what each singer brings to the band, because I write all the music, right, with the band guys. So it's the same source creating the music, but the records sound completely different. And it's really a testament of what Graham and Rob bring to these albums. You know, they're both insanely talented.
Yes.
You know, they have this ability to sing virtually almost any style, you know, and they don't have human limitations. Well, they have human limitations. We're all human. But what I mean by that, a lot of males, they can't go into a high tenor or go into an alto or a soprano, right? They can do it, but it sounds like they're on helium, right? Where these guys can do it. And like I remember Graham, especially doing Stand in Line and the song called Tonight I Fly, it gave us, we were all just in awe. I mean, the guy's singing up like, you know, like this alto or soprano, but he's not doing it in falsetto, he's doing it in real voice with tremendous power, almost inhuman, you know? And same thing with Rob with his screaming, you know? I mean, there's this guy that can do this, but he can, I can't explain it. He's got this amazing control with his vibrato. And so each guy are really uniquely talented. Now, Graham obviously is more known because Graham is, you know, he obviously was in Richie Blackmore's Rainbow and Michael Schenker Group and Alcatraz and Impellitteri. Sometimes I have a hard time saying my own name. Anyways, I'm stuttering over here. So, but, you know, Graham is one of those guys where you know, I get why people think he is like, there's a handful of singers. We're not talking about popularity contests, but singers, guys like Ronnie James Dio, you know, Bruce Dickinson, Rob Halford, Graham Bonnet is easily one of those guys. You know, where Rob, I think, is as well, but Rob just doesn't have as much notoriety as Graham.
Yeah, very good. I want to kind of bring this to songwriting for you, the songwriter. The evolution of songwriting for you. How do you feel as though that your songwriting has evolved over the years? Do you feel like you have songwriting maturity as you've gone into this business through the years, or do you feel like that your songwriting ability has always been like the prototype and has always been from the get-go?
Well, I know I get branded as one of these shred guys, right?
Right.
You know, you're crazy, speedy guitar hero type people, but the reality is, Impellitteri has always been a band. It's never been about the Chris Impellitteri ego guitar solo. It's always been about 4 or 5 band members contributing together to make this music. And so everything we do always starts with a riff and a song. The guitar solos, I guess, that people have kind of, I guess in some ways what I'm known for, right?
Yeah.
Is really, to me, it's always been only the icing on the cake. But without a good song or a good riff, right? The solo, it doesn't have a purpose, right? It's just to show off, which is useless. So, you know, over the years, I mean, we always started in the beginning where you got to have a good riff and a good song. Otherwise, why do it, right? So we've always been focused on that. But yes, I think as I mature, as I get older, right? I'm just like any human being. You do things more and more, you tend to get better at it. And so the one unique thing about our albums is you can hear how we mature. You know, we come out with the Impellitteri Black EP as these young punk kids, and we could play. I mean, believe me, at this point we're all classically trained, so we're playing at the top of our game, but we're young. So everything is more about aggression and speed, right? What you do, you get older, we've kept that aggression and speed, believe me, and all the screaming and all that, but you learn how to, I guess from a more mature perspective, how to compose songs, how to orchestrate parts, right?
Yes.
So yes. I think that's been part of our evolution. So I think we get better each year. Well, at least I hope we do.
Fantastic.
Well, being known as the guitar shredder, do you own a lot of guitars, or do you just have a couple that you just, those are my go-to? How does it work for you?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So I've obviously had many guitars over the years. Now I probably have 20 that are my main. These are high-quality guitars, right?
Yeah.
That I have that are like my go-to instruments, you know? So, you know, I don't know if that's answering your question, but yeah, there are probably 20 of them, of which 4 or 5 are probably the ones I rely on the most.
Oh, yeah, very good.
Do you have like a crazy, like a crazy story? Like what's for like, you know, like the most exotic place you've ever gotten a guitar, or like a story behind buying one?
I was telling someone this one the other day. The most, I guess if you guys know prices, I don't want to get into money, but prices on some of these vintage guitars. I remember one day I was at Norm's Rare Guitars and I was buying a 66 Stratocaster, and I made the mistake of looking around the corner of what was behind the case, and there was this beautiful 1958 Les Paul, and I made the mistake of picking up and playing it and loving it. Yeah. And it was like, this thing played so great, and I use it a lot on a lot of our records. Played so great and sounded great, I ended up, instead of walking out with just a 66 Strat, ended up walking out with the Les Paul as well, which was a very expensive day.
Nice.
Well, we always hear stories. We had Bernie Marsden on about a year ago. He was talking about, you know, working with Joe Bonamassa. He comes over to England or whatever else, or they're working together in the U.S., and Joe just goes off somewhere off Facebook Marketplace and goes buys a guitar somewhere and brings it back. He's like, "Where'd you get this at?" He's like, "Well, I went on first. We're in town." But do you have a story like anything like comparison to that?
No, mine, you know, I've picked up guitars here and there in different countries or whatever. Just, I mean, one thing I've always loved to do is, you know, go shopping. Like, you know, it's funny, when we were doing, there's a project I was doing for Sony Music about eight years ago. I think it was about 8 years ago. It was a thing called Animetal, and it was a band that me and Rudy Sarzo and Scott Travis, originally from Judas Priest, were in. And I remember we were touring over there, and Rudy and I every day, every morning, where we were in Osaka or Tokyo or whatever, we'd sneak off to the guitar stores, just to see, because they have a lot of amazing vintage guitars and basses.
Nice.
They're collectors. They hoard this stuff and then they sell it at outrageous prices, but they've got the cream of the crop. They got the best stuff. So, yeah, I always love going into the store and finding stuff. And then I'm always on Reverb,
Oh, very good. Well, okay, so pardon me. This is going to be a very long question, two-part question. Please, just bear with me here. So, I want to bring this back to Wake the Beast. And so, as far as I don't know of too many bands that will support a compilation album by playing live, because there's so many tracks to choose from. It's kind of almost like an impossible task. And that on the twofold thing of this question is, where are you at now in your career when it comes to playing, live and in touring? Do you do the fly-out dates? Do you participate in the festivals only, or do you get in the bus the old-fashioned way? I guess maybe this is a really long question for you to answer.
No, and it's a good question. So historically, it's always been Japan and specific places in Europe. So as the band's evolved, we've gotten bigger and bigger in Europe, right? Mm-hmm. Japan, for some reason, I think it's just luck or right place, right time. We've always been really big there, and not like in this underground scene. I mean, we compete with bands like Metallica and, Ozzy, people like that, those level bands. Mm-hmm. So we've always been very blessed in Japan to play arenas, stadiums, all of that. Europe, over the last few cycles of the past two records, we've been doing the big metal festivals. Like we did Rockfest Barcelona with Iron Maiden, and we were pretty high up on the bill. What that means is we were close to the headlining slot versus the band that goes on at 9 in the morning, right? So we did that. We did Sweden Rock Festival, which was crazy. They put us. They have like 9 stages, this massive 40 or 50,000 people audience. But they put us on the headlining stage, of which when we played it, we played first. It was Impellitteri. Journey went on after us, believe it or not. And then I don't know how Dream Theater went on after Journey, right? And then Black Sabbath. So there were 4 of us. It was literally Impellitteri, Journey, Dream Theater, and Black Sabbath. And then the other stage, you had bands like Europe and all the, the big thrash metal bands and all of that. Mm-hmm. But it shows you, it's really odd. We go to these other countries where, in the United States, let's face it, most people are like, again, they think we're some sort of virus, so when we say the name, they don't have a clue if we are. But we go to some of these countries, and it's remarkable how many people come see us, So we do there, it might be on a tour bus doing dates for 3 or 4 weeks straight. Mm. In Europe, a lot of times it is fly-in dates, And so if we do the U.S., I have a feeling initially it will be fly-in dates as well, because I don't know what we can draw in the U.S. We're really spoiled in Japan, of course. Sure. And in Europe. In America, we had a promoter, or rather an agent, that books a lot of big metal bands here, that offered us a full tour. But I got to be honest, guys, the offer, by the time we looked at the math financially, I probably would have lost somewhere between $50,000 to $100,000 a month out of my pocket just to do it. And I was like, dude, you know what? No. Yeah. It's like, and I do want to play for the people that like us here in the States, but I don't want to, spend that kind of money, because you go out there for a year. What do? $1 million out of my pocket or some crazy thing, so I can play for people. It's like, nah, I'll stick with Europe and Japan,
Yeah. Jeff, do you have the next question?
Well, yeah. So, I'm fairly new to the Impellitteri music, and I was reading in your bio that you sent us about Victim of the System being heavily influenced by Queen.
Big time.
What can you tell me about that album?
Yeah. Hey, by the way, guys, if anybody knows Los Angeles out there, I'm on the 405, almost by Mulholland. So this is a lot of times where we drop. Okay. So again, if I drop, I'll call you back. But,
no problem.
So the question, repeat that one more time.
Yeah, about Victim of the System being heavily influenced by Queen. What can you tell me about that album? Because I'm going to check it out.
Okay. So, at the time, we were coming back where we were really starting to go back to our roots, right? And we started to think about who were the bands that really influenced. One of our biggest influences, especially vocally, was the band Queen, right? This is long before the movie Bohemian Rhapsody. Yeah. I mean, we love that stuff, just what they did musically and the experimentation that they did. And it's funny, if you actually listen to the opening track, Victim of the System is very much like Stone Cold Crazy.
Oh, awesome.
Heavily influenced by Brian.
Yeah.
And, we really wanted to see what we could do with that. Like, because, at that time we did that EP, I think it was around 1993, right? At this time, metal in America is more like rap rock, right?
Exactly.
Singing definitely wasn't in it, definitely not guitar solos. So we were like, screw that. We're going to do it on steroids. Yeah. Let's take the singing thing and all the harmonies. And, we even did a song called Cross the Bear, which we were really trying to almost find our Bohemian Rhapsody. And that record, it was a lot of fun to do. I remember we did it, we actually did it at a place called 101 Studios. And this is kind of a name drop, but this is kind of a cool story. A guy named Mike Tachi did the engineering on it, and Mike had actually just finished the entire Black Metallica record with Bob Rock. As a matter of fact, Mike was really the engineer who did the record, right? Got all the sounds, Mike did, helped mix. And so what we did is Metallica, when they loaded out of 101 Studios, we actually loaded in to do Victim of the System. And what people don't know, when you listen to like the snare drum, the kick drum, that was all Lars drums. No one knows that.
Oh, wow.
So, we had all their sounds, all the vintage gear. So we were like kids in a candy store. They had spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars making that record, got all the sounds, everything, the equipment, and it was there all at our fingertips to use. So, we went in, we tracked that record. We probably spent, probably 4 or 5 months doing it. We spent a lot of money doing it as well. But the record, in Japan, it blew up. It was just like, it set up our next record, at least for Japan, called Answer to the Master, which immediately went gold. We're doing, sold out headlining tours there. It was crazy. We were on the cover of all the rock magazines or metal magazines, on TV, on radio shows. It was wild.
Nice.
Oh, so cool. I wanted to bring this back to, playing live shows in Europe versus playing live shows in Japan. Can you kind of compare and contrast the similarities and the difference of playing live in these two different continents?
You know what I've noticed? So in Japan, when I first went there, and I first actually went there with Graham Bonnet, stand in line, I don't know what happened, but something struck a note with the culture. And so stand in line was, I can't explain it to people. It's surreal. It was like a fantasy. We would go there, and we were staying in the hotel. I remember it was us and Billy Joel and all these mega artists, and we would come down, and there'd be like thousands of kids. We'd have security and police and just crazy. And the kids were wild, and I had always heard that Japan audience were going to be very reserved. On the contrary, it was nothing like that. It was insanity. And then playing Europe, I noticed, well, when we're playing, especially like the big metal festivals, everybody they're into it. They're screaming, hands up. It's like a big party. They're having fun. But, different countries have a different way, I think, they celebrate their metal. Like I noticed when we played Barcelona, right? Spain, those places, it's rabid. They're basically, those hands, they're just screaming, right? Just insanity. The Germans, they're still same thing. They're into it, hands up. But during the song, the hands are kind of crossed. Like, you got to work for it. At the end of the song, the hands are up. They're going crazy, So everywhere you go into a world, each audience is unique. And that's the fun part of being in a band, being able to play globally, that you do experience cultures. And culturally, they can be different.
Oh, so cool.
Well, also in the bio that you sent us, you kind of alluded earlier about MTV and playing when Graham joined the band and stuff like that. I read on here about MTV's Smash or Trash show. We had you guys were considered Smash, and it was very successful for you. But we had a band on recently where it was the opposite. They were on that show, and it just killed the band. Did you think MTV had too much influence, or can you talk about that time frame?
And I have nothing but good things to say. Remember, we're coming at the end. Now, we were never a hair band.
Yeah.
Right? So we were never the glam band or heavy band, so we couldn't fit in with the Poisons and the Motley Crues and all that. We were much more like a Van Halen or a heavy version of Queen or whatever. But MTV, for how much they could embrace us, remember, it's very political and very corporate.
Yes.
So they gave us as much exposure as they could. And they were great. I mean, they flew me to New York City. At that time, I was the only host, like the guest host, on Headbangers Ball. After that, they started bringing in like 5 bands and all this crazy stuff, right? But when I did it, it was only me. And they had like 25 million households watching it. So I will tell you, I almost joke in the U.S., and everybody's heard that term, 15 minutes of fame. Yeah. Everybody gets it. Yeah. You know, I will tell you, there is something, when you go on those shows, especially when they're at the height of their popularity, it's like you go from almost no one knows you to all of a sudden you're in the grocery store and, you know, soccer moms are coming up to say, oh, my God, I just saw you. And, you know, it's just like, I can't even imagine what it's be like to be a real celebrity, like a Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio. I can't even imagine what that's like, you know. But it's so MTV were really gracious, and they put us on Smash or Trash, which thank God we were a Smash. Because believe me, I was like, I was just like biting my nails going, I don't want to do this show, man, you know. Because believe me, at that time in the 80s, man, there were as many people liked us as many hated us.
Oh.
I was just like, man, I didn't know how this was going to go over.
I wanted to bring the classifications of genre of rock and roll and metal and what have you. It seems like it's like a watered down thing to do. If you watch that VH1 Classics series called The Headbangers Journey, whatever. And it just seems like, man, the branches of metal have gone, you know, it's like the tree that never ends. As far as your thought process on it, is that a good thing for rock and roll and heavy metal music to have all these sub classifications and genres of heavy metal, or just say, this is heavy metal, this is what it is? What is your thoughts?
Well, dude, it's weird to me because, look, in my humble opinion, right, so they say bands like, you know, Slayer, that's metal, and the other stuff is classic metal. I'm thinking, no. First of all, heavy metal to me started with Black Sabbath. You know, you could probably put Deep Purple in there. You know, then when you get, you know, the bands that really influence us, you know, people like Dio, right? Judas Priest. That was metal, right? When all of a sudden you get the bands, the Metallicas of the world, you know, Slayers or whatever, and now that's called metal or whatever it is today, it's like, well, no, technically you guys are more newer metal, you know? It's like, because I do notice they try to put these other bands as in some sort of classic thing. Iron Maiden, heavy metal. These are the founders. They get the heavy metal title. Everything that's in the 90s, all these mega metal bands, you know, you guys are the new metal. The Slipknots of the world,
right.
You know, again, new metal dudes. You're not heavy metal or the original heavy metal. That would be reserved for Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, you know, I'll throw in Deep Purple in there, Black Sabbath. That's heavy metal. So when people start throwing all these other titles on like classic and all that, I'm like, screw that, dude. No way.
But you know, you see this. We've seen it before. Like obviously with that series, like we have all these, like, you know, the Norwegian stuff and the Swedish stuff, all the Scandinavian stuff, you know, the black stuff, and then you get into different parts of different continents, and they're reclassifying things. Do you just think that it's a watered down thing? Because we had Tony Dolan, Demolition Man of Venom, on a few years ago, and he said it real clearly. He's like, I get sick of these classifications. He's like, we're a rock band. We play really heavy. Did you just ever feel like that you're a rock band that plays really heavy, or how does it work?
Yeah, well, I don't have a perspective on this because, you know, with Impellitteri, they struggled to figure out how to classify us. Like I said, you know, because we come out of the 80s, but we were never a hair band. Nothing.
Right.
The polar opposite. You know, if you listen to our first Black EP, it's almost borderline thrash with technical shredding guitar solo and screaming. It's almost like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden on steroids, you know? So they could never force us into this mold, you know? And probably maybe that's why we weren't more popular in the United States, because we couldn't conform, right? They couldn't figure out what the hell to do with us. Are you a solo shred guy like an Yngwie? Are you a Van Halen? Are you a Metallica? The hell are you? Which I kind of love, because I was like, no, dude, I don't know what we are. We just play music that somehow inspires us, right? Makes us happy, and that's the end of it. So, you know, I don't care what you call us. You know, we are just us.
Oh, so cool.
Awesome.
But I do know what you mean. I mean, it's got ridiculous. It's black metal, death metal, hair metal, Norwegian metal.
Yes.
And a lot of those bands are my friends. I mean, got friends in bands like Arch Enemy who I love to death. And to me that's metal too. It's all, but everything is different. When heavy metal came out, by the way, you had to be able to sing. By the time heavy metal took in the 90s, you had guys that couldn't sing to save their life. I don't mean anything negative about Rob Zombie, but I'm like, dude, it's like, can't you just play a bass or something? And I mean that with love. But, in me growing up loving these metal bands, the singer, you had to sing. You had to have that vocal ability. By the time we have the 90s, you all sound like a Cookie Monster. You can't sing to save your life.
Very good. Jeff, you got the next one?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, this brings me to the next question is technology and music. With young people now, it's a TikTok community where TikTok music has now become the popular culture. And don't think it's necessarily the best thing for music because we see now artists that are not really even artists creating music. They're just people that are pushing buttons on a computer. Your thought process, obviously you're a very accomplished, classically trained guitar player. Is this good for the popular culture of music and rock and roll, or do you think this is kind of like the detriment?
We're going to sound like very old people if we condemn this. So in the digital revolution, right, there are good and bad things about it. So for us, in the digital revolution with all these different mediums, right, where you can share music. Now, we've personally, and I know this is going to sound crazy to people, but we haven't really embraced social media. Yes, we go on it, but we've never tried to work it, right? Like, I got friends that have millions of followers on Instagram, and they call me and go, dude, what's up with your Instagram page, And so we've always been that band. We've always felt like we're a band of the people, but here's the good stuff. It allows your music to be shared, right?
Yeah.
So whether it's TikTok or some other social medium, it's a good thing. Because, look, when we first came out, if you didn't get signed with a major deal or a major label, the probability of you ever having a successful career was almost zero, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was dangerous. I mean, the record companies really had too much power, right? They could get you on MTV. They could fund your record. Believe me, we started making records. Today, people can do records in their homes, and they can do it very affordable. Now, we, to this day, still spend a fortune making records because we go into big studios.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of the stuff in live performance, so it's not cheap. But, in the digital world, it's made it more accessible, which is a good thing. It inspires people. So if you guys are artists and you're writers and you have this song in your head and you can bring it to fruition, you can share it with the world. There's no more barrier to entry.
Right.
So that's the good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never been on TikTok. I don't even know how the thing works. But if you can share your music with it, I'm kind of for it.
Interesting.
I don't know. That's probably not the answer you want to hear, but that would be it. Now, but there is something else you guys said. So the only downfall with the digital revolution and Pro Tools, the problem is you have people that really have no business singing. I shouldn't say that, but you have, software programs that do pitch correction.
Yes.
Yeah.
They can take the person that can't sing and make them palatable. They may not sound amazing, but they're no longer singing out of tune, right? Or out of key, rather.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, and, you've got people that can fix their mistakes and copy and paste, just like a Word document.
Right.
And it's like, that's a little weird because now you got these bands that are being created digitally. You got bands that don't even use real drummers on their record. It's literally software programs where they're programming everything with their keypad. And then you got these amazing drum samples. And now it sounds like an amazing drummer, but it's not real. So now you literally have music you're listening to, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there's no more humans. There's like maybe two guys that are really doing their thing real. And to me, that's weird. It's like, for me, the one thing I've always loved about Impellitteri, like I said earlier, we've never been a solo artist, which some people think. It's always been about four guys communicating musically. So when we're in the studio, I'm playing off the drummer, or the bass player's playing off the drummer, and we ultimately play off each other, and you capture that energy. And sometimes you get great stuff, other times you get mistakes, and even sometimes the mistakes are cool. But that's real versus computer creating all this stuff.
Very good. Well said. Jeff, you have the next question?
Well, yeah, I guess this is kind of the opposite of that. So, there's a lot of people out there that think rock's dead. And I know that it's probably because it's not in the mainstream culture. But as you're out there, as Impellitteri is out there playing festivals or playing stuff, do you see newer, younger bands coming up that like give hope for the future?
Yeah, I do. Now, this is where I'm probably going to lose some of our fans. So listen, you guys know, obviously, if you listen to Impellitteri, you listen to stuff like Victim of the System or Perfect Crime or even our Venom record, right? Like go on YouTube and watch our Venom music video. Mm-hmm. You kind of get an idea of who we are and what I love for music. But there's a band recently that I thought, man, I'm obsessed with, and it's not about their guitar solos by any means. It's a band called The Struts.
Oh, yeah.
I am blown away. I mean, I think if I've ever seen Freddie Mercury incarnate, it's them. I
agree.
So, dude, I don't know. I mean, I'm blown away. Enough to the point where I even actually responded to one of their posts the other day, and their singer responded to me, which I thought was funny. But that band, man, and it's funny, and you look in pop culture, I didn't realize, I mean, this is a band that I'm like, why are they not massive? And then I realized when I went on and started looking into them, they've done duets with, like, Kesha, which is this mega pop star, Robbie Williams, who's a mega pop star in England, Paris Jackson, who's Michael Jackson's daughter, right? All these people, even the Foo Fighters had them out with them, right?
Yeah.
And Guns N' Roses talk about them. And I said this, and I went, oh, yeah, these guys could bring rock back. Now, it's a bit different. It's more Queenish, somewhere between Queen and punk, but the vocals are incredible.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, so we have one last question for you, then we'll let you go for the evening. So the mystery of rock and roll, before the dawning of the internet and social media, we had this mystery of rock and roll. Zeppelin, Kiss, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath. We can just go down and list David Bowie. They all had this mystique to them. We really didn't know who they really were. Taken now, how many years has the internet and social media been around? It just took the mystery out of rock and roll, where we know that these guys are not too mysterious at all. With that being said, obviously you were part of the era of the mystery of rock and roll. Which do you prefer now in this portion of your career? Do you like the accessibility that social media and the internet gives us, or do you prefer that old school mystery and mystique that rock and roll once had?
I love more the mystery. Having gotten a little bit of success in my industry, I've hung out with Gene and Paul Stanley, just the three of us or whatever. I've been around people like that. I've been around many rock stars, a lot of bands follow us. And I've always thought that mystery, I mean, it's nice to have that shroud on because you don't need to know everything about our personal lives, right? I know people can find out, but I like that, It was kind of like, it reminds me of like the early years of Kiss, right? Gene was scary until you realized, he always talks about us making more money, and all of a sudden it became kind of campy and goofy. And I don't mean anything against him. I love Kiss, right? But all of a sudden the mysterious demon was no longer scary by any, And so, the same thing with like the Zeppelin guys. But, I think, to be honest, Robert Plant still has done a really good job keeping that mystique. Somewhat Jimmy Page in some way has. We don't know everything about them.
Right. Oh, well, very good.
But I do like it's like, there's more, I don't know, it's like, you don't know everything about our life, which I love.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
No. I mean, the one thing I will tell, because I've been telling everybody in this interview, or I've been doing interviews for this record, something that's really important, and I want to make sure everybody understands this so they're not misled. So this music that we're doing, that we're re-releasing, it's not remastered. It's not remixed, right? Because people keep going, is this new remastered? And we're like, no, why would we do that? We spent a fortune making these records. We got the best mastering engineers in the world, right? The mix engineers, everything. We got it right. we weren't going to touch it or molest it in any way. What we're doing right now is we're bringing this music to many people that never had access to it, right, without paying an obscene amount of money by buying it as some sort of export, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So we're bringing it for the first time to the people that have never had it, which are many, right? And so that's what this is really about, this release. You know, making it accessible to a lot of people that don't know anything about this band. And there are, believe me, there are billions of people that have a clue what we are.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Well, this is how things are going to work. Once Jeff, the editing wizard, has this all edited and everything to go, we should have this ready for our listeners in about 3 weeks, and we'll send this to your PR person immediately when it's available. Chris, thank you so much. It was a true honor to have you on the podcast
Yeah, thank
tonight.
you so much.
Guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm humbled, and I thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll get this to your PR person in about 3 weeks. Sound good?
Awesome.
Hey, man.
Hey, guys.
Thanks a
Cheers.
lot. Safe travels.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Everybody hides at home inside their nest of snakes. Everybody grinds the stone and makes their own mistakes. Hide in the headlights, fight the grip of fear. You can make your dreams come true, but you just can't do it here. Hey! Everybody eyes the gun and screams inside their head. Everybody bites their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey! Roll the dice. Take your chances. Everybody knows the game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then you plug out both their eyes. They roll the dice. Take your chances.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, the deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.